super stoked to have you here today.
I'm so happy to be here. I think it's amazing that we can do this,
Isn't it? I totally agree. Like,
When I
what
was a
other
kid,
scenario would you and I have, would you and I have been connected to have a conversation like this?
that wonderful. And when I was a kid, we didn't have a telephone. We didn't have anything.
I know. I was
So,
thinking about that. Like, you were. I read that you spent the first 15 years in India, right?
uh-huh,
And so, and was that so? You're 102 right now. So that was in the 20s.
102 and three quarters.
Yeah, every quarter counts at this age, right? What years were you in India? Give us like just
I was born 1920 in India,
1920.
and my mother went into labor with me at the Taj Mahal.
Are you serious?
I think she's kind of a drama queen or something. No, yeah, no.
That's good.
And then when I was 15, I came to the States for college.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What were your parents doing in India?
They were both osteopaths and all. Now, my mother was a physician when that was a very rare thing. She was an osteopath. And they were medical missionaries with
Okay.
the Presbyterian Church.
Right.
And so we lived in tents in the wintertime in the jungle of North India.
Wow.
Because when the parents took their medical work back to where people didn't know anything about it,
Right.
my parents reached out to the forgotten people
Right.
that were there in the jungles of North India. It was kind of fun. I loved it. I thought
That's
this
quite
was
a big adventure. Wow.
no, not just big adventure. The perfect place to be. For me, I thought this was just absolutely divine. The little Indian kids would run along, we'd play along together, and they'd rub my hand to try to get the white color off.
That's awesome.
Isn't that lovely?
That is lovely. I'm curious, now in retrospect, how did that formative experience in India shape you? Like, did it, because India is very, like especially northern India, very spiritual. The whole culture is inclined toward introspection. And I know maybe not in the really poorest fringes, there's still a struggle for survival, but, it's very different than Western culture, obviously. Just curious how it
Well,
affected you.
my parents started after they finished the work with out in the jungles, they and my Aunt Belle started a home for the children of leper parents
Oh, my.
in North India, right across from Rishikesh.
Right. That's a very
You know where
spiritual town.
Rishikesh?
Yes, yes, yeah. The big
So
great
it was
yoga
in
pilgrimage there every 12 years, I think, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, it was Bhogpur, just across the Ganges from Rishikesh. And they started this home for children of leper parents. And these children, their parents sent them from all over India because if they grew up with their parents, they were lepers and they would have to be beggars. And the beggars at the front door of how
Yeah.
the leper beggars do in India. But when they got the children out and they were taken away, not from their parents, but taken away so that they could have a home where they were loved and cared and taught some things that were really, really important. And so there are thousands of people, men and women, around the world who have benefited from this little children's home up in North India.
That's
So
extraordinary.
I was, I grew up watching that kind of vision from my parents, the way that they were able to reach to the poorest of the poor and the ones who were rejected above all, So for me, I could see no difference
Right.
in us.
Right.
I mean, sure, the kids were trying to get my white off, but I was somebody who was running around the jungles like they were, and we were just having a great time, you know.
Right.
So, and then that was until I started school. Then everything went haywire.
Well, that's also when you became a teenager and you're now in American culture and whew,
No,
what a difference.
when I started first grade, I couldn't read or write. I
Oh,
was
that's
so
what you meant. I thought you meant when you came to
yeah.
America. Yeah.
No, well, yeah, that's another story. But but that was my 2 years of being the class dummy and rejected and you know, bullied, and the teacher called me the dumb one and all of that. So it was something, and I had to repeat her class, and I still couldn't read. It, you know, it was so. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just couldn't read, because when I got home after a day at school, everything was fine.
Right.
And you know, I had this safe place where I could go, which I was so necessary, and it included my family, but also my ayah. The ayah was like the nursemaid or second mother and so on, and I always knew when our school. I went to school at Woodstock School in the Himalayas, and our home was a mile above the school, and a 1,000-foot drop down to the school. So I would drag myself up this hill, mountain, you know, because I knew the ayah was sitting at the top of the path with her chadar, her chadar, and she'd see me coming up, and she'd say, "Idhar aao, come here," and I would go over and tuck under her arm until my world came back into shape.
Interesting.
And then I could go on with my brothers and do a thing, you know. But the next day I had to go back to school where I was a dummy. It was this kind of a split. I knew I wasn't a dummy, but I couldn't read and write. And the fascinating thing about that,
And they had no idea. This is dyslexia, right? Is that
no name for it.
No
No
name.
name for it. And my parents weren't taught anything about stuff like that.
Yeah. Right.
It was just something they kind of figured out that maybe it was because Urdu is written from the other side,
Right.
and I just gotten mixed up. I mean, they excused it that way, but it wasn't something that the world knew anything about.
Right.
But when I started the American Holistic Medical Association, there was a time when this is in the early 70s, yeah. There was a time when we were having a board meeting, and there were 6 of us physicians sitting around the table. I mean, there were 10 physicians sitting around the table, and 6 of us were severely dyslexic.
Amazing.
And we looked at each other and we said, well, that's why we're looking for the alternatives.
Right.
You know, because I don't know how I learned to read, and they didn't know. We looked at each other and said, how'd you learn? I don't know. I just learned. I taught myself. I learned to read. I had to read. I had to get through medical school. There were things I had to do, and so we learned.
Incredible.
And so it was the understanding of this sort of dual life that I had lived, and the way that the whole process of medicine was evolving into something that I didn't accept totally what was being taught in medical school. In fact, the dean sent me to the psychiatrist twice because I was looking for something deeper in the education than killing disease and eradicating pain. You know, I mean, I thought those were okay, but they were more like teachers than to the body than it was that they were.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
Where do you think, maybe it's a where or when or a why, maybe it's all three, the Western medicine got divorced from the mind-body connection, and just looked at all as just a physical expression of disease? Because it didn't. I don't think it was really like that in the earliest part of the century, was it? Wasn't there much more of a holistic approach?
I think what A.T. Still brought into the field was not that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the osteopathy.
Right.
The whole concept of the body being the teacher.
Right.
And you're really learning what was going on. And that's what my parents, they were taught as osteopaths.
Right.
And so, but I think when the importance of being of passing tests and understanding structures and so on was made so rigid right at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
I think that shifted, and then it continued to shift.
Right. Yeah, we shifted culturally into just really like staunch materialists, and if it couldn't be examined, and have evidence behind it with some sort of material, scientific study, then it was completely rejected. And so anything that was and the side of energy work, or the mind-body connection, or the power of positive thinking, all that stuff, like early advocates of that, like Norman Vincent Peale and Napoleon Hill, like they were, and Emile Coué with his positive affirmations were having a profound impact on healing.
Oh, yeah.
But it was all just rejected by Western medicine because it wasn't something you could measure very easily.
And even Larry Dossey's prayer, the fact that prayer had on plants and so on, that those were things that when we started the Holistic Medical Association, it took us 2 years to decide how to spell holistic, because the root word we were looking for was health, healing, and holy.
Right.
So it had
did you guys coin the term holistic? Is that you guys came? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Oh, I don't know. Somebody else was talking about it, but we're, spelling it with an H, we did.
Right.
Because
as opposed to WH, like holistic. Yeah.
It was something that when there was a shift happening in the field after the war, because after the war, everything was body mind, period.
Right.
That's it. You could do it, you could see it, you could, we were just beginning to understand the mind, but at least it was there, Milton Erickson was we worked real closely with Milton, started the holistic, the realization that hypnosis was something that could be used.
Right.
And, so there were these different modalities that were beginning to emerge, and so there were a whole group of us who began to understand that. The Edgar Casey work helped us a lot. Bill McGarey was my husband, helped us a lot, and in understanding the importance of just energy, what energy is, and the whole process of who we as beings are, was just something that was totally woo-woo. I mean, that was just...
we're not out of the woods yet with that, right? I mean, there's still a lot of hands-off from the mainstream medical, but it's definitely, like we were talking before we started recording, it's sprouting up all over the place, in the last 10 years in particular. I'm curious, you also were the co-founder of the Academy of Parapsychology in Medicine. Tell me about what your view of parapsychology is. What does that mean?
Well, it means the ability for us as physicians to reach beyond the body-mind in understanding what it is that we are working with. And that the parapsychology includes the basic psychology, but beyond the basic psychology, there was this something else that's going on. You know?
So
we
it's like
are humans, and we're reaching
right.
beyond that.
There's energy systems that are beyond the human individual system that can be affecting or play a role in healing. That makes sense to me. It's like the word metaphysics, it just means beyond the physical or the unseen world, which, science will deny, but physics is beginning to recognize as everything is energy, like you said, and it's just expressing in these different life forms and also inanimate objects and non-seen or non-physical forms of life.
Well, my eyesight has gotten very poor, so that I can't read now because of I can't see the left. But as my eyesight has gotten dimmer, my insight has gotten brighter.
Right.
So it's a matter of allowing myself to really reach in beyond what I'd even been teaching about, and reaching beyond that. It's an amazing time.
That's amazing. That brings up something that I wanted to talk about. I mentioned to you that I was a SEAL, but before I was a SEAL, for 4 years I got into a martial art and I started meditating, and then I got exposed to visualization. I don't know if it was through the Grandmaster or through my reading, because I was, like you, I was a voracious learner and everything to do with.
Well, Milton Erickson did a lot.
Erickson did a lot of work, yeah. And so visualization was nothing new, and I think even Napoleon Hill in his book, his work, he talks about the power of that. So I started to, anytime I would get injured, which happened a lot on the karate dojo floor, you know what I mean? I would start visualizing. I use visualization, and I would visualize a little army of, construction workers, tearing down the old broken, ligaments or whatever and replacing them. And it took some time, but what I found is like I started to heal much faster, like twice as fast as my peers. And so I've been teaching that for years. And I'm just curious, is that something that is part of your work with clients to help them use the power of visualization and imagery?
Absolutely. And I've been so pleased with the stem cells that have shown up.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Because using them as the reality that science has told us about, and that we have within us these packets of energy that really could listen to us. Yeah. So I've had patients that I've really taught that. In fact, in this book I talk about a patient of mine who really wanted to, what's the name of that trek in Spain that people climb? Anyway,
the something Santiago Trail or the
right. She'd always wanted to do that, and she injured her knee, and was going to probably have to have surgery. And she came in, and we were talking about it, and she just, the whole idea of losing that ability to do that trek was central in her life. She really had always, I don't know, as a child or somebody, had really, really wanted to do this.
It was on her bucket list.
When I started talking about to her about stem cells, and that those stem cells in there knew what was going on, and she could, and we got a good conversation going about how she could really work with those stem cells because they knew what to do, and they were the ones, so on and so forth. She grabbed hold of that, and within 6 months, her knee had healed.
Amazing.
And she did the trek. So it was,
So let me ask you, Gladys, when you're talking about the stem cell knowing, I mean, I agree with you, but so
yeah,
are you actually like, would you visualize the stem cells and talk to them, like, you know?
yeah,
Okay,
like little people, you
like
know.
little, yeah, like little
Yeah.
soldiers.
So
I love it.
however she could visualize them.
Right,
My visualization was my visualization of that, but and
right,
so I would share that with her. But however she could visualize them,
right.
that was the important thing, and she latched on to that.
That's cool.
And the others too. You know, I really changed the name of my work with medicine from holistic medicine to living medicine
Oh, I like that. Yeah,
because it takes it to the next dimension. You know,
right,
that life itself is the great healer.
right,
And that if you stop life, you die, you know.
right.
And so that the whole concept of living medicine, I have
Yeah.
a friend and patient who just died a month ago at the age of 89, but no, 70, 78. Oh, I don't know, decades get all mixed up.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is that she lived from the time that she was 18 months old when she was injured with 1/4 of one kidney.
No kidding.
That's not possible.
Wow.
But she did. I mean,
She did it.
through the years, I watched this woman have all kinds of illnesses and things come and go, and she would deal with it
Yeah.
her own way.
You know, what's coming to me, and I, because I love this conversation, is this, what you just said, life is meant to flow, right? Life is movement.
Ooh,
Life
yeah,
is flowing through us, expressing as us.
all
And
the
so
time.
it wants to move. So the more you can allow the energy to move, the life force to move through openness of your mind, openness of your heart, movement of the body, being outdoors, exercise, right? And
Yes,
in relationship to others, play, dance, knit, read, whatever. Just life wants to move. Because if you stop the movement, then that's when it starts to get stagnant. And so I use
it
the
dies.
metaphor of, like, yeah, if you want your life to be like like the Ganges flowing as opposed to like a stagnant
Right,
pond,
right.
where everything dies.
And if you're stuck in a place like, and you're always looking over their shoulder into the darkness behind you, you're going to get a stiff neck. And you can't do much with that, you know. You get stuck. You have to move that head forward and start looking towards the light.
That's
You know,
awesome.
the darkness will stay there. It'll be always there.
It's
You
always
can
going to be
always look for it. But
better
what,
to ignore it. I came across a quote this morning that I love, which is completely appropriate, from Soren Kierkegaard. It says, "Life is understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards."
there you go.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yes.
let's talk about your book. Is a well-lived life or life lived well? Let's see. The well-lived life. It could be either way, I guess.
Yeah, well, you know, at first when we started talking about the title, I didn't like that.
Really,
I didn't want my life to be the one that was well lived.
you didn't want to be
And
on the pedestal.
we
You wanted,
finally
right?
got it that that's sort of what the book is talking about. It's talking about the reader.
Right.
The well lived life is what the reader
Right.
is getting,
Right.
not, you know, what I've done is done, and it's there, but the person who can begin to understand these concepts and latches onto them, that's the well lived life.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, and a well-lived life is a great example for
Yeah,
others.
yeah,
I look at, like, there's no one human who is better than another. We're like a bunch of flowers. You don't go to a flower field and say, "Oh, this flower is better than that flower." But as humans, we do that all the time in judgment and separation.
yeah,
But if
yeah,
we all could just look at each other, look at humans like a big flower field and say, "Wow, everyone's different, but everyone's beautiful." And
yeah.
everyone could be a potential life lived well. So I'd be interested in how that flower of Gladys lived her life, right? And because there's lessons there. There's lessons in everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, you know, the big saguaro is beautiful and its blossom is beautiful, but the tiny little African daisy, which will grow at the bottom of the saguaro, is just as beautiful.
Right.
But the roots of the saguaro go deep, deep into the earth, but the daisy is
Yeah.
just at the top.
That's
You know,
exactly.
so you have friendships and relationships which are very deep, and they hold your soul in proper.
Right.
You know, it doesn't blow over during the wind. But the little blossoms of the African daisy, it's every time you get a big monsoon, those little roots are going to go floating off.
Right.
But it doesn't make one more beautiful than the other.
That's right. I love that. You know, and like a big point that you make, I think, in your book, and I want to talk about is this idea that we don't, like, we're not alone. Like, we are, everything that we are and do is in relationship to others and to the world around us. It's co-creative, right? And I
Absolutely.
think when people finally get that, it's a radical shift in their perspective and how they live.
Well,
So,
you know, yeah, I totally, yes, it has. If we're really going to understand this, we have
yeah,
to get that into ourselves. But you know, I have a word that I'm using now to help understand this, and it's called femifestation.
femifestation.
Instead of manifesting, femifesting. Okay? And you know how that happened. I work with my dreams. So, okay, this one about, 10 years ago or so, I woke up with a crash in my dream. And I'm in the dream and out of the dream, and I see myself in a valley in the high Himalayas. And on the right-hand side, there's a young woman splayed out on the ground, just barely breathing. And on the left-hand side, there's a huge man in armor in the same position, just barely breathing.
Wow.
And I'm looking at these two, and I'm wondering what this is. And the voice came to me and said, these two forces have been punching each other for eons. It's time they opened their fingers and
And
understood each other. They're killing each other. And I looked again at the picture that was there, and the girl, the woman, was on the right-hand side, which is the masculine side, and the man was on the left side, which is the feminine side. So I'm thinking, boy, this is a big thing. This is really important. So I had this psychic friend of mine, Rosalie Dearhart, and back in, anyway, I called her and we were talking about this, and she says, you know, I've been thinking about the whole process of manifestation. She says manifestation is like climbing Jacob's ladder. You get a degree, you do that, you buy a house, you manifest something, and you climb up this ladder. And we women have been trying to do that, and we've accomplished it to a certain extent, but it's just, that's just not where our juice and our energy is. We don't have that Jacob's ladder. We have a spiral.
right.
And we can be up on the fifth rung of the spiral and know what's going on down on the second rung. And things have to first femifest before they manifest. And even so, a pregnancy is a perfect example of this, because the whole pregnancy, however months long it is one unit. The mother and the baby are one unit. What the mother thinks, the baby thinks. What the mother eats, the baby eats. It's a whole process as one living feminine unit. But manifests itself when that baby takes its first breath. It then becomes
Separates, yeah.
something, it manifests. So I think this whole concept of our duality is something that is really important. And for us as women to think we have to be like men. Like when I was in medical school, I went to women's medical college in Philadelphia, the only women's medical college in the country, and it's still, but there, 50 of us were over the first year. But only 25 of us graduated because the whole concept was you have to be available to the patient and manifest, they didn't use the word, but they were saying manifest the healing in a way that they, the whole idea of medicine was manifesting the reality of disease
Right.
and pain. So those two had to really focus. And what we were saying, what I began to say and we began to think was, no, that's not our job. We have to prepare for that. We have to grow into that. We have to develop the feminine-festation aspect, the duality of our nature.
Yeah.
We have that dual nature within us, but we didn't understand that.
Right.
So I think it's really a good word, this
Yeah, that's
feminine-festation.
interesting. It's that spiral. I was thinking about that recently in the terms of like starting with a cultural context, but it also has to do with our internal duality nature. So I'm glad you brought this distinction. But the Western mental model, to say, is linear. It's a beginning and its end. There's cause and effect. Whereas the Eastern model and the agrarian models are circular, right? And they're just different perspectives. But if you bring them together, if you bring a line and a circle together, you get a spiral. And that's an integrative approach, right? Where you can still have some directionality, which is the masculine, but the circularity and coming back to your center, which is the feminine, is part and parcel, an equal partner in that. And I think that's what you're talking about. I think that you're right. Women are much more inclined to appreciate or naturally experience that balance between the masculine and feminine, even though culture and medicine has tried to strip or force you into the masculine. But I think men have it equally, but it's just so taboo to express it that it's really suppressed. Very suppressed.
To trust it is what's so important. After you manifest as a being and you have a name, so you become who you are. You've manifested with your first breath.
Right.
Okay. Then you have to let the feminine-festation come within you.
Right. And for a guy, we can call that just like what
I call it the physician within.
Being authentic and inward. Okay to be inwardly focused, quiet, and to develop that insight and the internal skills. Where most men are outwardly focused because that's the way we're trained. That's the way our brains are wired to think. But
my eldest son is a retired orthopedic surgeon, and he came through Phoenix, and as he was going down to Delray, Texas, to start his practice, and he said to me, "Mom, I'm going into this world. I'm going to have people's lives in my hands." He says, "I don't know if I can handle that." And I said to him, "Carl, if you think you're the one who does the healing, you have a right to be scared. But if you can understand that within that patient is your colleague, and that's the patient's physician within them, who actually knows what you are saying and what you're doing, and that this is so important that you do both of them. You allow that inner aspect of the patient to tell you how they're going to accept what it is that you're telling them.
Yeah. I love that. So I know you've been through many ups and downs in life. How do you recommend others move beyond pain and, getting really stuck from life's kick in the jimmy?
Well, for my last birthday, the 102nd birthday, I rode in on a tricycle into the audience on a tricycle because of that thing. And I did a little talk, and I said, this tricycle is allowing us to look at what it is that we're doing. First of all, we start out with 2 wheels, and these wheels are the cycles in our life, but they can't go anyplace. They're just cycling there, and they are doing their own circle of life and so on. They can't do anything until they are put into a structure, which is the frame of the tricycle. And then they can begin to move and do something, but they can't do that until they get the 3rd wheel. The 3rd wheel is the one that now brings into the cycle of the 2 of them the direction or the way or that it could go and so on. But even that can't really do anything until somebody sits on that seat.
Right.
And so you bring the whole consciousness into reality, which is there to really go along with this amazing structure that has been created. And then we can go where we need to go.
So if you're feeling stuck, don't focus on the structure. Get back into the reality that's allowing it. Yeah. Go back to source energy. I love that.
Yeah.
Related to this, but there was a great quote I was reading, an interview you did, and you were talking about, or someone asked you about the pain from the divorce that you had, a 46-year marriage that fell apart. And you said something that I thought was really profound. You said, it's not a matter of getting over stuff like that. It's a matter of living through it. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, because if you get over it, you just shove it in the corner.
Right. Suppress it.
And it continues to be pain, and it continues. It doesn't heal.
Right.
You have to, love and life need to move in order to heal and become real, the whole process of, I do a lot of my work with stories, mostly about my own life, because that's what I understand.
You got a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah. So I was the class dummy for 2 years, but when I went into the 3rd grade, my teacher saw something in me that the other had not seen. And so she appointed me class governor. This is in India. And so I was the one who was, because I could talk, And so she allowed it. I could bring the work that we were doing as a class to the whole student body and give a report. I mean, that I could do, but I couldn't anyway. So this one time, the 3rd grade was doing a play, and the play was The Frog Jumped Over the Pond. So I was the tallest one in the class because I'd flunked the year before and all of that stuff. So I could jump over the pond. And so the pond was a dish of water, and my mother made me a green dyed green suit and all that. And so I walked out on the stage really proud of myself, and I knew I could do this. But as I walked out onto the stage, I saw my two older brothers in the first row of the audience, and it just threw me off my step just enough that when I jumped over the pond, I landed in it, not over it. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
standing there in this pond, crying. The the dye is fading and going into, and I can't do anything but stand there and cry.
Oh,
And of course, my brother in the audience are just cracking up. I mean, they're laughing. It's the whole audience is hysterical. Teacher finally comes on and leads me off the stage. And in my mind, I'm totally humiliated.
right.
I'm just done. And so we go home, and my brothers are telling the family at dinner, and my mother's listening to what they're saying, and I'm trying to give them the devil's eye, and they're not paying any attention to me. But they're laughing, and you're just having the best time with how it looked, and what I was doing. Finally, my mother says, "All right, boys, you've had your fun now. What can we as a family do to help Gladys so that if this ever happens again, she'll be able to have people laugh with her, not at her?"
Mm-hmm.
And I
Wow.
don't remember what it was that we did, but that statement changed my life.
Wow.
Because with this dyslexia stuff, which of course is still there, my nervousness, I I'm clumsy, and I do a lot of times. I walk up on a stage and I trip and I fall. One time, not too long ago, I tripped and um, got up and went up to the podium, and I'm standing there and saying to the audience, "I'm such a drama queen." And the woman who had just introduced me came up to me and she says, "Dr. Gladys, would you please go sit down? The blood that's running down the side of your face is all out." So, it's the kind of thing. My mother was always able to find something, some little thing, to twist it around so that it changed. She was an angel with this.
Sounds like it.
One time when, just a week before she died, really, we were sitting out on our porch here, and she says to my dad, "John, look at that petunia bush. It's got at least 400 blossoms on it." And my dad says, "Oh, Beth, they're not more than 40. She says, "What's another zero?" I mean, that kind of sense of humor that was the juice that actually allowed me, and still does, allows me to take the things that are, they're hard,
Yeah.
and use them. Because now, if I have something like that happen, and I can have the audience in my hand before I ever say anything, because now I can understand that I've got to come up with something funny, and I always can do that, and we're off to running.
Yeah.
So it's
Immediately you say, "There I am. I'm standing in the pond again. Let's make the best of this." I love it. And that's such a powerful principle for a well-lived life, is to make lemonade out of the lemons,
make
right?
do.
Because there's a lot of lemons in life, and if you just are sour about all the lemons, then you're just going to be a sour person. So figure out how to make lemonade and have fun with those. Learn from those. But I like that idea of living through it instead of getting over it. Yeah, we got to wrap up soon, but another really powerful thing you say is kind of common wisdom that as you get older, to power down, conserve energy, slow down. And though those things might happen, you have a different view on it, don't you?
Oh yeah, like my eyesight. the fact that that's dim now and I can't really see well doesn't mean that I've lost my insight. It's a shift in perspective.
Right.
As we get older, there are things that we have learned because we've lived our lives this long. And if we could take those things that we have learned as learning instead of trauma or things that keep us stuck, if we think that the things that are hard in our lives are the things that get us stuck, we're going to die sooner.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You know, life has to move. It's essential that life moves. So if we can allow ourselves, you know, when I tell a patient to go home and rest, I'm not telling them to go home and do nothing.
Right.
To rest is doing something.
I agree.
So when folks think that they're, 75, they need to stop doing this, that, or the other thing, maybe they do for a while. Or maybe you need to change the way you do things or something. Maybe there needs to be a change, but you don't stop doing it.
Right. This is why the idea of retirement was such a horrible idea, because people die within 5 years of retirement because they lose the movement, they lose their sense of purpose, and life just kind of grinds to a halt. So no to retirement. Just shift your focus, bring your lessons to the world like you have, or be in service in some other way, and you can do that until the day you die, and life will keep flowing. I love that.
Well, I always said that I wasn't going to retire until I had something to retire to. And what happened was that my brother, who had created the future generations, which is a healing process around the world, it's an amazing thing, he had found out that in Afghanistan, the Afghani women's maternal death rate was higher than any place else in the world. And they couldn't get the answer. They couldn't get the story. They couldn't find out why this was. So Carl, my brother, said, "Now look, you're 86. You're saying you're looking. If you want to retire to something, how about you come with me over to Afghanistan, and we'll set up workshops where we can listen to the women about their birth stories. Nobody has listened to them." And so I was 86, and so it suited me fine. I went over there and spent time with women. We had 2 women from 10 different villages in each of these workshops. And we heard their life stories. We heard how they gave birth. We found out the problems that they were having. We educated them in what they knew how they got pregnant, but they didn't know what goes on. And in the meantime, like, I don't know what's going on in my gut right now. It's that process that is processed all the time that you're pregnant. So they didn't know. And when they found out what was happening, and they learned it, and they took it to their villages, that whole process has changed.
Wow.
They're now with the other. Actually, our death rate can be down the scale. It's. Well, I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah. We have a lot of problems with our Western medical model, but I mean, the work that you're doing. And,
but these Afghani women got it because they taught, and women do this. When women learn something, really learn it, they teach it.
Right.
It's in us to do that.
Right.
We get it on that tricycle and we teach it.
Amazing. You've probably answered this, but like, what would you like to have known, or what if you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self something that would improve your life? What would it be?
Well, that that this moment that I'm in right now is the most important moment of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's not that living, really living each moment, is the most important moment.
Yeah, because that's really all we have. Everything
Yeah,
else is just either imagination or memory.
yeah, and it comes and goes.
That's right. Fantastic. Gladys, this has been a true honor. I really want to thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your time and your contribution. And you know, people are going to love your book. The book is a life, the well-lived life, coming out. Is it McGraw-Hill who's published it? Um, is it out in the markets now as I'm recording
Yeah, oh
this?
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It's
good,
it's
good, good.
it's
All right,
around. It's coming out in paperback too.
excellent.
Yeah.
I don't imagine you use social media or any of that stuff, but if anyone wanted to kind of connect with you, how would they do so?
The GladysMcGarey.com.
GladysMcGarey.com. Terrific. Well, once
And
again, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I love the
you're certainly
conversation.
welcome. It's my joy.
You have a wonderful day.